Come on, computer. There we go. Right. So, the Mistel Barocco Ergonomic Split PBT mechanical keyboard with Cherry MX blue switches, black, in black. So, it looks like I am frankly not familiar with this. I am less. That's super weird. I'm sorry. This is gonna echo. So I am not familiar with this particular keyboard. I like that it snaps together and comes apart. I prefer that when they come together as one piece, that they lock, just because it's easier to move the split around like that. The connector, so that's interesting. That's a USB micro to USB micro, which is pretty custom. That's interesting. I'm not a huge fan of the USB micro connection, just because it's one of those things that tends to get worn out. How is that male to male? I messed around with doing that before, and it was always kind of interesting. I worry about those connectors just because, I mean, if you're going to wind up moving it around, this is not a thing that everyone has a problem with, but if you're going to wind up moving it around a lot, you wind up getting into this situation where you're constantly unplugging and replugging. What does that say? It's micro and mini USB? No, these are all micro USB. I can't read it. But when you get into situations where you're unplugging and replugging constantly, things are different than if you are in a situation where you're like, well, this is my desk, this is where I'm going to work, I'm going to set up camp here, I'm going to plug in my keyboard, and it's just going to sit here for weeks at a time. And that's fine, because you're not transporting it, you don't care if there's wires all over the place, you don't care if you're not really unplugging and replugging constantly. The biggest thing I would say, I mean, I don't want to be an elitist here, but I don't like the horizontal stagger. I think it's bad for your fingers. It's not a huge deal for most people. Tilt is not that big of a deal. Again, tilt only promotes you going like this, and that's never good. You would want to get ideally you would want to get a wrist rest that covers like half the height of the keyboard. So if you had the wrist rest, it would come up to like this middle row, the ASDF row, that it would be that high. That way your resting position would be in the middle of the keyboard. So the up reach would be minimized and the down reach would be minimized. I mean, technically you want more down reach than up, but whatever. Let's see. I generally don't like those connectors. Can probably straighten things out. It's always better to, I mean, with the split, you wind up getting your opportunity to. This guy he took off his wristband at least to take the picture, but his wrists are not straight, and you can see they're very clearly bent up like this. So building around the ergonomics is what you're going to want to do always. Where things get a little bit more iffy, and don't get me wrong, this is a really good half step. I mean, if you have zero ergonomics going for you right now, a split will do a lot. I'm not sure if this is programmable. I think programmable is really big, is extremely big. Programming the layout is done exclusively with keyboard bindings. That's cool. That also means that you might have limitations, or you definitely got limitations. Grady, Dvorak, and Colmac. 3 fully programmable layouts. Perfect for programmers, except you don't have to program it. You just press buttons. N-key rollover, that's good. I mean, N-key rollover is really only a benefit when you have when you're layering pretty heavily. Split feature is great for traveling light, I guess, yeah. And it's Yeah, it says it comes with a mini USB cable, micro USB cable, orange color enter key. That's orange. I always support orange. Me and my orange. I don't know what's up with that. It's only been the last few years. Can you use the keyboard separately? You can use both sides separately. And the right side is master. That's interesting. Plug in only the left side to play games. All the keys you need are located on the left side. Okay, yeah. Well, that's not bad. That just means that you can, yeah, there's no mechanism to snap the halves together. That's another travel thing. I'm always focusing on travel stuff, and it's just not a big deal for some people. So just take that with a grain of salt. It's like a 60% poker with a split. Yeah, either this one or an Atreus, but I like the split. Yeah, the split is, I don't know, I like the split. I generally like splits, but I just get so much work done on this one, and that is partially because I'm standing, and like I said, we've had that, I think you were here for that talk. This is my, my ergonomic neutral is right here, and that means I get this together. And if you had longer arms, or it wasn't that big of a deal, you can be in a chair and sitting a little further away, and then you can have your arms on hand rests so you're not dragging down your shoulders, so they're supported, and then you can be typing spread out. So it is definitely an option. Yeah, without traveling, it's not a huge deal. We've got a Rapid Fire XT. Does that take a Frosty Flake? The Quickfire Rapid, and I'm not sure, I'm fairly certain that's different from the Rapid Fire XT, but there's a board called the Frosty Flake. Hang on. There we go. Yeah, there's our Frosty Flake. Welcome to Flavortown. Population Frosty Flake. This is a programmable swap-in controller card for a Quickfire Rapid, and that gives you access to use easy AVR on a Quickfire Rapid. Whether or not something programmable exists for the Rapid Fire, I'm not sure, but definitely worth checking out. I talk a lot and I focus a lot on the productivity increase that you get from having a programmable keyboard, and it appears this one's moderately programmable, but you don't have, I don't know, it's cool to not have to use the software, but I think what's cooler is good software. Because then you get your GUI, you get a solid interface where you can really mess around with things, rather than doing key combinations and remembering things. Most people focus on layouts, and they switch between QWERTY and Dvorak and stuff like that. But I'm talking about macros, I'm talking about multi-keys, I'm talking about layers. One thing that would be of interest to me is whether or not that split spacebar registers as separate keys. And that might be, how do you reprogram the FN key? Yeah. Has anyone found a good accessory to tilt the keyboard so the wrists are in a more neutral position? Yeah, that's what I was talking about with the as I crack my wrists involuntarily. So I was talking about this tilt here. Where are you? I swear I was just looking at it. Yeah, that tilt, that angle there. It's not. That's not conducive with keeping your wrists straight. So setting it flat is going to be your best example. But then they wind up doing the same thing that everyone does, which is tilt it upward. It's just not the right way to do it. Oh, I'm sorry. I was interested to know whether or not these space bars are separate, are registered as separate keys, because my opinion is that you have a lot of wasted space under a space bar. I mean, your thumbs, and if you look at your space bar right now, you probably find that there's only one part of the spacebar that has wear on it, and for most people it's usually the right thumb that they use for spacebar only and always. You might get a little bit of wear around about under the C, the Charlie key at the top. Sometimes people press it with their left hand, and that's usually because they're doing something with their mouse and their left hand is still resting there. And that's where my mouse assist layer came in. That's what that was designed for, so that when I actually am using a mouse, I have keys like enter and arrow keys on this side, so that I'm not moving back and forth, because when you get the split, it's exaggerated, because you're like, typity, typity, type, switch to a mouse, typity, typity, hit enter, enter. And then you're like, okay, I got to arrow down. Arrow down. So setting up something that was on this side that helped out with the mouse was not helped out with the mouse, but had the keys I usually needed while my right hand was on the mouse was a better idea. I also wound up binding the numpad plus to an enter. You can also do this with your mouse buttons. What I usually wind up binding is cut. I think I just do cut and enter, because I can... No, I think it was just backspace. Yeah, backspace and enter. Because I could do, select things with your mouse, and then you hit backspace on the mouse itself, or enter on the mouse itself, and then you can copy paste and do other left-handed keyboard shortcuts here without having to reach over. But that split space bar is, in my opinion, I mean, as long as it's split out so you can program one half and program the other half separately, that's very useful. But I just think that there's a huge opportunity that's missed on that left-handed thumb. Because your left-handed thumb, your left thumb doesn't do much at all, if anything. Most people only use their right thumb, period. And their left thumb is just like this vestigial thing that should be, that could be helping out a lot. Or worse, that left thumb gets turned into the function key for switching to that left alt, which means you start doing this thing, which is all right for a little bit, or is all right if you're mismatching, or if you're opposite matching your layer activations. So like if I'm activating on this hand with this thumb, I would want my primary keys to be on this hand. That way I'm not doing things on the same hand, I'm not chording on the same hand, or I'm chording as little as possible, I should say. But yeah, you wind up doing that alt reach thing, and that's what I got when I was programming my my QFR. So I was like, well, this spacebar is great, but I want easy access to my function layer, because that's how I get more work done. That's where I put my macros. That's how I get all this stuff going. And then I would wind up doing the reach, and you reach your thumb all the way over, and you hold it down, and you reach for other things, and it doesn't take that long. It doesn't take that long before the pain starts up. And then you're like, man, I sure wish there was a function key right under my finger, and that's where you get here. And that's where you get, something like this. And that's how I got here. And, on the original board, it was... on my first custom keyboard, it was this. It was right there. It was perfect. And this has the benefit over the Ergonox, because I really think... I think I have smaller hands than most people, but the Ergonox has its thumb cluster way too far over. And the Ergonox copied a lot from the Maltron, hang on a minute, not the Maltron, the Kinesis Advantage, which copied a lot from the Maltron, depending on who you talk to. So there's lots of stuff. This is probably a good, let me get back on topic here. This is probably a good, 6 is in a bad spot, but I think it's okay. Yeah, I don't know. Does 6 usually make it over? go. Yep, 6 is usually left. So 6 is on that left side. And it should be. It's left of Bravo, so it's like, why wouldn't you? Oh, here's another cool bit of ergonomics that is just like wedged in there, like no one even cares. Like IBM was just like, you know, this is also awesome. So here's the left side of the keyboard, and they got arrow keys on both sides, right? And this shift, this full length shift here, that's a normal shift, right? Switch to the right side, they got arrow keys, right? They got a shift here, right? But why is there a little shoulder here? Feel that? See that? If you've been paying attention, you know why there's a shoulder there. And that's for seeking, tactile seeking. We do a lot of seeking with our hands, just based on touch, automatically. You know, you don't look down and think, I'm going to go to the number, or I'm going to go to the page cluster. You just reach. And when you reach, your fingers hit this dead space. And this dead space is ThinkPads. IBM ThinkPads are excellent at this dead space. But that's how they space their keys. So when you drag your keys up to reach for something, you feel this little valley here, and you feel this little cut here, and you know exactly where you are on this pad. That's what they did here with this shift, this right shift cutaway. When you have that right shift cutaway and you're typing, and you reach down for those arrow keys, that ring finger drops right in that dip, and then your middle finger drops in the dip, and then your pointer finger drops in the dip, and then you know exactly where you are. You don't have to look. Everything's right there. You feel it. And without even thinking, automatically, your fingers seek right there, because they let your fingers see where they are. This spacing helps your fingers to see where they are. And that's where you get that, 97% up to a 98% or a 99% of speed. And that's all tactility. That's all just feeling stuff. And that's why these keys are inverted. Now, these ones are lower. They're a lower profile, but they're also upside down, so that your thumb cradles in there. And then when you hit the key up to the right of it or to the left of it, it's a lot taller. Yeah, that's why DSA is nonsense. DSA is nonsense, because DSA takes all of this lovely tactility. It takes your fingers, who are doing a lot of feeling and finding for you automatically without you even knowing it, and it says, all right, fingers, you're blind now. You've got nothing. It's just this flat canvas that you're just drawing your fingers across. And you can learn, spatially where you're reaching and about where you have to press, but you can really only do it on this smaller keyboard, because that reach, you only get one key length of reach. That's also why I took these off. I hooked this up, I set these up, and I was using them, and I realized that my top row here was slow, and I couldn't figure out why they were slow until I took off these top keys, because my fingers were reaching up and they're catching the top of the keys. They were feeling the top of the keys. They weren't just reaching short like this. They were going up. They probably shouldn't go that far, but they were reaching up for the top of the keys, and when they reach this ledge, they know where they are. But when there's another key cap up there, it doesn't reach a ledge, it reaches another key. And it slows everything down, and I started flubbing keys, and I started hitting keys on the top row rather than this row. Took them off, back in business. Your fingers do a lot of seeing for you. And don't put blinders on. Let them help you. So, good heavens. Yeah. You're on the god level of ergonomics. I'm just starting with the split. Yeah, this is... Gosh. I want you to get something that you can grow into. Because if you're anything like me, you're going to start, you start out small, and you're like, well, this is okay. And then you start to realize the workflow improvement. Like, the amount of work that you can get done with a programmable keyboard, I think doubles or triples. I mean, it depends on the work, obviously. But for the most part, and this is workflow talk, for the most part, a lot of what we do with computers is travel time. And that's a was it S5? 5S thing. It's an efficiency thing. It's travel time. I'm in this program. Well, now I have to switch to that program. And I'm going to move my mouse over and I'll click to that program. And now I want to be in this context to type a response to you. Anything that you can do to reduce the amount of time that your hand has to travel, to reduce the amount of busy work, basically getting from this program to that, or just navigating pages that you frequently navigate. I have this workflow process that I did as a business analyst, and I basically automated the whole thing to my keyboard, where like one key press switched windows, copied things, and then pasted them into the next one. And then the ability of a programmable keyboard to improve your life. I'm not talking about getting work done faster. I'm talking about improving your life. Is just fantastic. And we're like, people are buying Artisans for their keyboards. They're like, oh, look at that. It's pretty. I don't know, man. It's like you got a Ferrari and you're just like, man, listen to the radio in this thing. Come listen to my radio. So, I mean, get a keyboard, get a split, work on your ergos, yeah. But look for something that you can grow, that can grow with you, I should say. So that this is programmable to an extent. Probably has pretty good resale value. 150 is pretty good. I'm a little cheap, but looks like it has pretty good reviews. Generally, people wind up going with browns, just as an FYI. I think it looks pretty good. I would go for it. I think it's okay. But I don't want to force you into. Okay, all right, let's take 12 steps down the road. You kind of want to ease the transition, and I know I'm not normal. I changed up this layout every day for months. I would tweak little things about it every day for months, and I would have no problem adjusting to it. I'd think about it for like 10 minutes and be a little slow for about half an hour, and then I'd be fine, which isn't normal. So, that's a fairly good point, actually. The Kinesis is, I don't like the cord is short, but the Kinesis Freestyle has been very popular. Oh, $199. That's not what I was thinking at all. I mean, if you're going to stick with the horizontal stagger, and I would definitely try a grid layout, like this, if you can, just because it's I don't know, some people transition slowly. There's actually, all right, so I had almost no problems transitioning from a horizontal stagger to zero horizontal stagger, to a grid layout. The only problems I had was ZXCV, which is apparently very common, but that transition was very, very short. And I think part of it was because we wind up using, because the ergonomics on a standard keyboard are so bad, we wind up using these little tricks to get around it, and to get around the pain, and to get around the bother of, gosh, these things are so big too. We do, the correct way. See this? Yeah. So the correct way is supposed to be like this. And we wind up getting closer, and then when we're this close, and especially on laptop keyboards, because we wind up being closer on the laptops, we start to do this thing where we're coming at the right side from an angle. And people handle this differently. They're basically adjusting. And when you see people like on YouTube, like Cryosan, I'm pretty sure he does something like this too. Like he's blading himself, just like this is like gun talk. He's blading himself to the keyboard to get a different angle on it. And when you do something like this, you'll notice that your wrists wind up straight. This is your body like going ow, 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 ow. Oh, that's not so bad. And you wind up learning this really messed up typing style. But this hand winds up being straight. And some people handle this differently. They do different things. Some people do power through like this. But we wind up doing really weird things ergonomically to make up for the deficiencies of the keyboard. And there are some things, I think, that you do that make this transition very easy. So some people have trouble transitioning to a grid layout. And I'm not talking about a 40%. I mean, even if you have a full 60% or a full keyboard that's just a grid layout, like a, what is it, a Typematrix? So it goes over here. Yeah. So this is like a Typematrix, and this is something that it's not mechanical, which means it's not really programmable, but it has the vertical keys set up, and it has your mods in better places. So the shift on the pinky, it's a good idea too, and shift on both sides. That's what you want to, when you're shifting, you should be doing what I was talking about earlier, opposite matching, where if you need to shift to get up here, you shift with this hand rather than shifting with this hand and then reaching up, because this spreading motion is not good, especially when you're pressing down really hard. But I actually typed on one of these. I don't like them, but you know, I'm crazy. Don't listen to me. This might be sufficient to kind of get your fingers just straighter. There's different kinds of pain that come from these things, but you know, some people have a very easy time transitioning to a matrix, but some people it's a bit harder. I still think it's worth it, but if it's going to be something that kills your productivity while you're actively working, it's going to be really hard. And that baby step is a lot easier to make. So yeah, this is moderately programmable. You can start building macros, I assume, on it. You've got front print keys. Your arrow keys are on IJKL, which is great. That alone is super useful. Again, I'm curious to know if you can make that left spacebar into a function layer. But most of the companies that make, even like poker, most of the companies that make these are like, yeah, you can program it. You want your A key to be over there? Done. And that's like that's the level of complexity that you get. Further, like a macro is defined as a series of letter keys rather than, you know, Control Shift Tab, Tab, type something, Shift Tab, and Control Enter. Now that's a macro that you can program, but when you get on some of these keyboards, that's not. They're like, whoa, what are you trying to do there? Why don't you just type an email or something? Type your email address. So being able to upgrade, and that's why I support that the Quickfire Rapid or something that takes a Frosty Flake. Let's see, what were the other ones? Who makes that? Bathroom Epiphanies. And people, I made the transition. Let's just start using our names, guys. And what you whisper in secret will be shouted from the rooftops. It's gonna happen. Here, like the Philco Pegasus hoof. So B Epiphanies does these boards, and One Up Keyboard sells them and stocks them. You can buy them straight from Epiphanies if you get on Geek Hack and send them a message and some cash. But like, you can buy a Philco that's compatible with this board and swap it in, and for $35 you've got a programmable keyboard. And that's something where you can get it, try it out, and be like, yeah, I guess I'll get into this. And then you buy this board and you've instantly got something that's programmable with a very useful, yeah, there it is, Epiphany, in a very useful way. Pay attention though, these controller cards are a bit older, or made for the older boards. So confirm whichever one you're buying. This says works with the Philco Magis Touch 87/88 only. So if you buy a new one and you're like, buy it straight off Amazon, you're like, oh, here's a Philco Magis Touch, it might be a newer version. So pay attention to that. But there's just find a board that can grow with you. I really like these Freestyles. I don't like that the keyboard, or the cord is non-detachable and the cord is short. But you know, Kinesis does a lot of really good work. So this is something I would probably be even more apt to recommend, just because they've got a bigger name that's been around for longer. And you get macro keys. Look at that on the left side. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Oh, plus you can get this awesome tenting kit. Really great tenting kit. That's good. People use those on other keyboards too, just because they're so good. Yeah, there's lots of options for splits. But yeah, this is the longest and most rambling question answer. But I'd say it's okay. I'd say go for it. I think you get you'll get a lot of value added for what you get, as long as you explore the functionality and just, you know, try to program stuff, try to mess with it, try to reach the limits of your tools. And that's like, I don't know if that's just like the rifleman in me. Like, I want to shoot up to my rifle. I want to take advantage of every option and every possibility that's available in this keyboard. I want to push to the limit. I want to walk along the razor's edge. I want to get to that point, because that means I'm using my tool to their optimum, to its optimum capacity. And that's why I build stuff, because I got to the limit. I hit it. I'm moving on. Yeah, the Typematrix is interesting. The Diverge always looks weird to me, and I like that they have it's a hard cable, which is fine because they have a really long cable. But like that guy, that's a cool design, and he did a cool. It's cool. That's wrong also. Hello? Oh, this is Alt now. Oh, I'm on the wrong home key. Yeah, Uni keyboard, that's right. Yeah, the Diverge 3 is very cool. I like it. If I recall correctly, though, it doesn't do QF or QMK. I think it has its own. Yeah, it has its own firmware. And I know keyboard firmwares have come such a long way, just in the last few years. It's like, I don't know. I got burned on the Infinity Ergonox, and I was like, obviously I need a split. This is programmable. This is like the way of the future and all that, because it's got like the ARM3 processor, and that's where things are going. And it's like, okay, well, obviously this is a better architecture. It does better things. It has better features, but because it couldn't support the older firmwares, it ran on, you know, is it Kibo HD, his firmware, or the Kibo HD firmware, and it just wasn't there. Like, you could move the keys around and you could do combination keys, and that was it. And I'm this is just me talking about me, but I'm beyond that. guys. I mean, I couldn't do it. The firmware didn't support and couldn't support and wouldn't support half the things I wanted to do with it, and I had to sell it because I just couldn't do it. I couldn't work with it. I was slower for it. Plus, and this is my fault, I bought them with DSA because I was like, well, DSA is perfect. It's flat, and you won't have to worry about it. Yeah, learn from my mistakes. DSA robs your fingers of their vision. They can't see anymore when you take out all that tactility. That's very useful and has been built into the keyboard for many, many years. But yeah, this Diverge is very cool. I don't know if they sell them assembled or if it's always a kit. Yeah, assembly service is 49 ducks. So if you were to get it, no wrist rest, browns, don't care. I'm not sure this is an actual selection or if it's totaling anything. I forget what these were, 150 I think? What just happened? Did it just kick me out? What just happened? I was trying to figure out the price, but you know, whatevs. Fully assembled, easy to use. And the other thing about buying a keyboard that will grow with you is if you make a living with your keyboard, and I mean that, if you make a living with your keyboard, you should consider it a high quality tool. There's people, like if I go to it's $279. If you go to a craftsman, you go to a woodworker's house, he doesn't have crappy tools. Like any other field, people understand that a good tool helps them to get their work done faster and better and with fewer errors. And then we walk up to our computer with its garbage laptop keyboard and we're like, I'm just gonna work through this. This isn't a problem. This is just work. Who cares about work? Like, we can do better. We can do a lot better. Thanks for the long answer. Yeah. I'm nothing but long answers, man. It's crazy. The Iris Pro, since we're talking about, how difficult it will be to transition, I almost wouldn't suggest the Iris just because it's got the grid, it's got the vertical stagger, and it's got the thumb keys. The biggest habit that's hard to break on your typing is backspace and enter, because this is like you keep doing that, and then transitioning that to thumbs is difficult. That takes time, and like I said, if it's a hard transition, it's difficult, you're gonna bail on it because you still have work to do. Yeah, I almost wouldn't recommend the Iris if you're not ready to take that big of a leap. It is also harder to program, so yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and recommend my recommend that Mistel Barocco Ergonomic Split PBT mechanical keyboard, cherry MX blue switches, black. Although I'd probably recommend, if you don't already know them or like them, if you don't have a switch preference, I'd recommend the MX Browns or Gatoron. Well, they don't have Gatoron Browns, but the Browns are generally where people start. Yeah, the tactility, you notice the tactility when you switch, or at least I do. The Dygma Raise? Bronzelli? Ooh, the world's most advanced gaming keyboard. Oh, and it's a Kickstarter. Oh! Oh, sorry. Call me Call me a skeptic. Or call me someone who just pays attention to history. Yeah, the wrists need to be straight. Yay. We're not going to talk about forearm pronation, but whatever. We could change the colors of each individual key. Yes. Gamers spend a lot of time looking at their keyboards. They're always like, where's the 3? There it is. Yeah, I got it. Where's the Q? There it is. This is how I play Counter-Strike. I don't know, whatever, man. Oh, see? No, that's good. That's good. See, the palm rest, see, this is the goal. That's not particularly well executed. This palm rest should be a little bit higher so that we're flat along the top. We've got fingers kicking up over here, which is more kinks. You would want this scoop that being able to... Oh, hot swappable. Come on. Sorry, I'm a cynic here. This is too much. So this is like, it's cool. The Kale or Kyle or Keel speed. I like the speeds, just because there's lower, shorter press. This Kickstarter marketing. Sorry. So many of these. Sorry, I'm just... Like I said, call me a cynic. Cool. It's split. They appear to work as individual keyboards. I'm not sure if layering on one will switch to the other. That's a feature that is generally not considered when they start building some of these things. So if it treats it as 2 separate USB devices, then when you hit a function layer on your left thumb, the question is, does that change a function layer on the right side? That's a big question. The space bars look about the right size. I have single-use space bars, but whatever. It looks pretty cool. Pretty neato. I don't know what these buttons are below the space bar. That seems odd because you would wind up reaching down to hit those thumb. They've divided the space bar into 4 extra keys under it. Yeah, but your thumb doesn't move that way. Like this thumb button that's underneath the thumb button right here is the objective that you would reach down like this to hit it, or like this is your thumb's range of motion. And if you get on Geek Hack or Desk Authority, the way people design these is to build to the thumb's standard motion. They build one here, and one here. So this is where your thumb moves. It doesn't move to here. Again, you could probably get away with it with opposite matching. If if your thumb button is hard to press here, and I do this with the iris because I don't find this button particularly easy to reach. So whenever I need this button, I'm either pressing it like this or I'm pressing it like this. I'm coming off the home keys and then I'm operating on the right side so that I'm not doing a weird reach plus chording on that same hand. My biggest worry would be the firmware. Firmware and support. Hot swappable switches. Yeah, whatever, I guess. That's cool. But the firmwares, so much has been done in the firmwares in the last few years, and to be able to have awesome ergonomic features like tap keys, like leader keys, where you, rather than holding down keys and key chording, you have something that functions basically like a sticky keys, where you tap a key and then hit another key, and then it sets up another layer, and then the third key that you tap, or maybe just the second key that you tap, hits that layer or hits some other special function without you having to hold a key, and then do another key. And QMK supports that very well. But that's something that Vim actually... I don't know where it started. I think it started with Vim. I'm not positive, though. I don't know how many Kickstarters Luis Sevilla has done before, but production is a talent. it takes practice. You need to have produced things and shipped things on time in order to be able to prove that you're going to be able to do that in the future. I don't know if he has. I hope he has. It looks like a really cool keyboard. KeyMouse. Sorry, let me get an order. Blanks. Yeah, blanks. I am firmly in the camp that I believe that most people can touch type, but they choose not to. It's like, oh, I have to look. And then if you catch them, they still hit buttons without looking, or they just like kind of glance and hit the buttons. I think it's a crutch. And I think people can, once you actually start touch typing, or, actually start practicing. I mean, I don't want to get... No, I do. Yeah. Nuts. So if you make your living with your keyboard is your interface that connects this body and this brain to this thing that helps you get work done. For God's sakes, learn your tools. Figure out how to use it and improve it. There was a big change that happened to me when I started doing typing tests, playing typing games. And I was already a very fast typist, and I was already a touch typist, but something about just, I'm going to play a typing game a day, and it'll probably be moderately interesting. Here's one of my favorite. zty, zty.pe. Playing something like this just to stay sharp. Like, this is your tool. Like, I don't know, I got this in church. We're talking about, love God, we praise God, we worship Him. And then the answer is like, okay, how much do you worship Him? Well, we go to church. And then this was around Super Bowl time, and I'm not much of a sports fan, but pastor was like, so does Tom Brady praise football more than you praise God? And they're like, well, Tom Brady's up at like 5 a.m, and he's working on this stuff, and he's working on his craft. And like, people don't appreciate that these professional sports, professional players, like, it's their life. It is their life. And they got to be at the top of their game. And meanwhile, we're over here like, oh, well, I'm just a business analyst. I just type emails. I just do whatever. This is your interface. This is your tool. Are you getting better with it every day or every week? Or are you stagnating? And that can be the same question that can be asked of you no matter your job. Are you improving or are you stagnating? It's like it's how seriously you're taking your life. It's how seriously you're taking your work. It's how much you care. It's a measure of how much you care. I don't know if this is going to work well with streaming. It looks pretty smooth. That's a bit chunky. Let's bring down the... Will that make it faster? Yeah. So even just playing a game like this, just to stay sharp. This is fun. This is interesting. There's a game called Typing of the Dead, I think. It's I think it's a Steam game. You do have to pay for it, but it's a pretty cool way to stay sharp. Oh yeah, I don't like this. The lag is a little weird, but it's good. And it's free. I just typed free. Yeah, it's still a little choppy right now because it's doing a lot of work, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't cost any time hardly to be able to play a game like this and to just mess around a little bit. And at the end of the day, you're making things better. You're making progress. So it counts. Every little bit counts. But like, learn your tools, you know? Take it seriously. Kind of forced me to learn my fingers, yeah. I'm just a business analyst. You know, I just type emails. This is way behind for me. Let me refresh this. There we go. Blanks, kind of forced to learn. There was a jump, few keys maintainable. What do you think about the KeyMouse? Hello? Yeah. KeyMouse? I don't think I wrote that right. There we go. It's a keyboard and a mouse. I don't know. I might not be the right person to talk to about this. I'm not. So do you move the entire unit around? It doesn't look like it. The bottom doesn't look like it slides around. 2 mouse sensors, 1 under each hand. Maybe you do. That would be okay. I got to make sure, because I don't. That's kind of a big deal if it moves around. If you move around, like if you move it as a mouse and also type on it as a keyboard, you have 2 conflicting motions or experiences that you have to manage, because the more stable your keyboard is. Oh, that's not it. The more stable your keyboard is. This can't be it. The more stable your keyboard is, the faster you type, the better things go. So to make a keyboard that you move around, which you do indeed move the entire keyboard around, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. My immediate reaction is that's a bad idea. I try to use my mouse as little as possible. I use Vim. I don't know. But the difference in motion seems kind of cool. Just because it'll be a little bit more interesting. But it seems like it would give you an opportunity to get yourself in an ergonomically bad position and then start typing. I don't much care for that. I would rather it had a trackball attached to it, or a track point, because the track point is very, very, very sensitive, very accurate. I don't like it design wise. I think it's neat. I don't like it design wise. But like I said, I stay away from the mouse as much as possible. I think mouse clicking, that action is bad. It is bad. It's the same repetitive motion. It's usually done too heavily. Just stay away from the mouse as best you can, is my opinion. Optical keys are the next level. Optical keys. If you're referring to, gosh, that's weird. Now, I don't know, something like that as an individual keyboard, like as an actual mouse. Like you would have your keyboard and you'd reach over and grab your mouse and then you'd move it around, but also you would have keys that you could press. I could see that. I don't see using it as a primary typing device. But then it's just, a mouse with lots of buttons on it, which is okay too. As long as it's programmable, you can change it to do whatever you want. It's really the programmable. I keep playing it up because it's about learning your tools, and then it's about adjusting your tools to your workflow, so that it fits in perfectly with what you're doing day to day, and it takes the strain off of you, because you can take that repetitive task and turn it into a macro and build it There was, I think someone mentioned auto hotkey. Using auto hotkey to automate a lot of this stuff, it's doable. And also type on it as a keyboard. You have two. Oh man, yeah. I don't know what's up with the video, but it sounds like you can hear me. Yeah, Bronzelli. He's learning auto hotkey for automation. Yeah. Auto hotkey can do a lot, and if you do what I do, which was overuse it, you'll start to run into the limitations. And if you do it as hard as I did it, you'll run into them pretty quick. Keys not registering, keys that are picked up by the OS, keys that are dropped, or keys that get stuck. And I don't blame that on auto hotkey. It is a bit of a hack. It digs into the interface between you and the OS, and it grabs stuff and it pulls stuff out and it puts other things in. So it's not really made to do. It's not really made to handle that, I don't think. But it does a good job of what it can do. And running into an issue every once in a while is a lot better. You get more benefit out of it than if you didn't use it at all. It's definitely worth the trouble and worth any bugs or things that you run into. Oh yeah, so optical keys at the next level. Cryosan actually did and I don't know if you know Cryosan or if that's even how you pronounce it. Cryosan22. He does a lot of keyboard reviews, and he talks like this all the time, and it's pretty cool. And then there's a curse word in there for no real reason. But he's a really cool guy. He does a lot of good work. But he did a review on that laser keyboard thing, which is like, I think that's probably going to bring it up. Laser keyboard. Yep, there it is. So this is where, remember how I was talking about like DSA, there's no profile and you can't feel anything? This is where I was talking about you run into these issues. Let's close some of this, free up some memory here. This is where you run into these issues, is when you completely remove all tactile sensation by making your keyboard made out of light. It's a laser projection on a solid surface, and it registers your touch on those different areas. It is a prime example of why we feel so much with our hands, why we get so much done, how much we see with our hands. Because when you take all that away, you get this. And typing on this is apparently a nightmare. And incidentally, he says, wears out your fingertips because you're just beating them against a flat surface for an extended period of time. So when will I ditch the mouse or trackball and start using Eyetracker? So the deal is, I had where is it? There it is. I've been using Easy AVR, and it has excellent mouse movement, and it's easy to move the mouse around. It's intuitive, and it speeds up when you double tap. So I've been using that for gross movements, and I mean, you've seen the way I code. It's mostly just using keyboard, but every once in a while I'll have to switch contexts, and I won't be able to actively like tab into it, and I'll have to use a mouse, and I'll just use the keyboard to shoot my mouse over there and then click, so I'm not interrupting my flow. And I just try to stay away from the mouse as much as possible because it's bad. I don't like it. Clicking is, like I said, it's a bad motion. It's bad for your hands. The vertical mouse helps that a lot, but I'd always heard about trackballs, and I figured I might as well try it since I'm, input device junkie. And since switching to this trackball, I'm much, much, much more apt to use it as a pointing device. and to reach for a mouse when I would normally just use the keyboard. And I don't know yet. I've only been using it for about a month, but I don't know yet whether or not I'm going to get thumb issues. I know that's an issue for some people, but I don't know if I'm going to get it. So far, it has been excellent. It has been better than a regular mouse in a lot of different ways. There's no wrist movement going on. It's easy to move the mouse around. Now, the other thing is you need to make sure that you crank the sensitivity up and turn on acceleration so that you can make those gross movements, those big movements fast with minimal thumb movement. So you're not just constantly like walking yourself all the way over there. So you can make those quick movements and then slow down and be able to make those fine movements by with the acceleration. When you make the smaller movement, there's no acceleration. So I highly recommend this. And this is relatively inexpensive M570, I think. Yeah, it's a Logitech M570 Mic 570, and you can find it on Amazon for like $22. And honestly, just get one to try it out. It's probably got good resale value. I don't know, for $22. You can throw it in the trash or give it away if you want afterwards. It's definitely worth checking out. It's been great. It's definitely changed my workflow. And it opened up the mouse and my use of the X mouse tool a lot more as a supplement to how I interface in graphics programs, Inkscape or Adobe Illustrator or something like that. So yeah, highly recommend that. Optical, Eyetracking. So I knew someone at the hospital who had eye tracking set up on his computer, and he used it for gross movements, and I would basically that's something that I'm interested in, definitely, because I rarely use the mouse anyways. I'm not sure if I'd be able to really click this tab right here versus that tab right there on a browser, if that would be easy to do. But like I said, I use the keyboard so much, I don't need to click a browser. It's I have shortcut keys for that, and you do too. Control Shift Tab. Control Shift Tab will flip you backwards between browser tabs. Control Tab will shift you forwards. But when you get a programmable keyboard, you don't have to do finger yoga to do Control Shift Tab. You just click. It's one key. One key if you want. It's probably going to be on a layer. Shoot, where was I? Yeah, so I might only need gross movement to be able, I'd get the mouse generally over here, and then I'll click. And when I click, I'll probably click on my keyboard anyways, because that's where my mouse is and my mouse controls are. So that's even better. I haven't gotten into it yet. I've really been enjoying this trackball, and I haven't had any thumb problems with it. So, I'm okay for now. I'm still very interested in it. Optical, I meant the optical, but optical versus laser switch. Yeah, I don't know. I think this one's optical. I don't know. Again, I've stayed away from a lot of mice, so I don't know the new technologies and all that. Optical versus laser versus whatever. Yeah. I think that's it. There we go. So I'll ask any other questions. And I'll play some more Z-Type while we catch up. Oh, this is gonna kill. Maybe I do need another PC for streaming. Just seems kind of slow. Let's do it faster. And the cool thing about this is when you press each